Today we have no sponsors because
Oh, Ethan's a hypocrite. Cough. That unsubscribe button is down there. Click it and go subscribe to Keemstar, hit that bell, and enjoy the ride. And in 3 years, when you grow up, come back here because I'll be waiting. I feel like I can't express myself genuinely, and we're living in a society where there's eggshells everywhere. We're all tiptoeing around, and it's stupid. My intention wasn't to be offensive, so can you just accept it on that face value? If you're looking for an apology, you're not gonna get it. But hopefully, at least maybe you can understand where I'm coming from a little bit.
so of course our wonderful fans have taken upon themselves to write all of our sponsors and to have them not sponsor or not to support us.
Ethan Klein is a media and entertainment mogul. Between his channels, he's amassed nearly 13 million subscribers on YouTube alone. But lots of people have lots of YouTube subscribers. What makes Ethan special is his ability to adapt, to survive as his environment changes around him and new threats emerge from new corners of the internet. Depending on who you ask, Ethan might be the next evolution of YouTuber on the cutting edge of survival of the fittest, delivering content that's relevant and in demand for years on end. Or he might be something less savory, willing to make compromises to save his own skin, throwing weight off a sinking ship until there's nothing left to throw overboard but himself. You see, this guy's been making content since the Jurassic period of YouTube back in 2013. Ethan has had more people try to cancel him, end his career, get him banned, downvote his videos, and unsubscribe than most creators will ever have fans. But Ethan isn't passive in all this, quite the opposite. Ethan is a fighter. And again, depending on your perspective, he's either a master of sticking to his morals or sticking his foot in his mouth. Let's take a look at the evidence together to see what truly makes H3H3 uncancelable. Ethan's oldest videos visible on his channel come from 2013, when YouTube was a completely different place. Emerging from the primordial goo of this website at the time were creators like Sky Does Minecraft, Smosh, and Toby Turner. But outside the mainstream gaming creators and late-night talk show hosts that YouTube was promoting in an attempt to attract more advertisers, there was an edgy subculture making content for a completely different audience. Creators like Pewdiepie, Filthy Frank, iDubbbz, and Max Mofo were pushing the boundaries of edgy content on YouTube, making prank videos, gross out challenges, and videos addressing topics normally considered too taboo to talk openly about, all while having a ton of fun were their specialty. This is the crowd that H3H3 would associate with at the beginning of his career. Ethan's channel specifically featured meme edits, satirical sketches, and reaction videos. At the start, the H3H3 channel was just a place for Ethan's wife Hila to upload her videos for her art class. But the channel quickly grew into much more than that. By 2015, Ethan was making fun of pretty much any absurd thing he could find on the internet, and the channel exploded, crossing 100,000 subscribers. During this era, almost all of the channel's content was based on making fun of social movements Ethan thought were absurd, feminists and social justice warriors, and prank YouTubers who faked their videos and followed scummy trends.
Hey, what's up? It's a MILF, guys. Hey, how you doing, MILFies? They call me MILF Hunter. Hey, let me see your let me get a little sip, huh? Can I get a sip of your breast milk? Oh, shut up. Loosen up, lady. They all love sharing the breast milk. Hey, come on, lady. It's just a prank, lady. It's just a prank, man.
For his audience, this content was pure fun. Ethan's whole shtick was just having some goofs and gaffes with his buds and his trusty caretaker. By this time, H3H3 videos were regularly bringing in over 1 million views, and Ethan began to collaborate with YouTubers like JonTron, Filthy Frank, and PewDiePie. But Ethan was about to learn that balancing influential friends on YouTube with his audience, if not handled correctly, could spring some nasty leaks in his rapidly accelerating ship. In February of 2017, the biggest YouTuber on the platform, someone Ethan was good friends with, got himself into a massive amount of trouble. PewDiePie had been commissioning gigs on Fiverr for content, seeing just how far people would go for only $5.
I paid for this. What? What's with the Christmas? I like the editing.
Subscribe to Keemstar.
This video went live on Felix's channel, and within a few days, mainstream news, most notably the Wall Street Journal, picked up the story. But they didn't stop there. Contacting Disney, who owned Maker Studios, the studio that was almost finished with the second season of PewDiePie's show. The show was immediately cancelled, and the Wall Street Journal contacted all of PewDiePie's other sponsors as well, encouraging them to cut ties with him. This started what was known on YouTube as the adpocalypse, putting the financial stability of the entire platform at risk as advertisers began pulling their money and creating panic. Ethan quickly made a video on his channel called Is PewDiePie a Racist?
As a Jewish person, I'm not offended. And this is the problem with this manufactured outrage. People getting offended for people who are not offended. You don't need to get outraged on my behalf, okay? He's a comedian. Maybe he pushed the boundary a little too far. But guys, that's it. Let's not call him an anti-Semite.
This video was well received, as the majority of creators and viewers on YouTube agreed with Ethan and banded together to back PewDiePie. But as no one could have predicted at the time, this would be used against Ethan in the near future. A couple months later, Ethan was working on a new side project on both Twitch and YouTube, the H3 Podcast. For the 4th episode, Ethan brought on another one of his popular YouTube friends, iDubbbz. Like PewDiePie, iDubbbz made edgy and comedic videos at the time, and the conversation naturally shifted onto the topic of Ian's colorful language used in his videos.
So, it isn't the slogan.
Oh,
The slogan is, hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, come on.
That's a character.
you've just got so many catchphrases.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
guy's...
I don't make them myself. I just, I can get away with it because someone else said it, right?
Right.
So,
Well, who said...
an unfortunate gentleman whose Kickstarter I made fun of.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I love that I can just say it, though.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel
a
like
little.
you're using it a little liberally.
I love saying it's so wonderful. So
now
when
you're gonna get shit for it.
This podcast was received well, with a majority of likes and a decent amount of views. Ethan's audience at the time didn't have a problem with this kind of language, and everyone, Ethan included, seemed to believe the words weren't hurtful when used in this context. Just 5 months later, PewDiePie would have another blunder. While live streaming, he had a heated moment and called the person who killed him in PUBG the N-word. Once again, news outlets erupted condemning PewDiePie, but what was different this time was Ethan's response.
I don't think Felix is a racist person, but god damn, he really kind of just was really comfortable using that word. Like you're reaching for all these words, right? And you're like, oh, let me just like a little N-bomb for you. I mean, I know this is a point a lot of people say, but it certainly seems like that's not the first time he's used that word in that context. And look, if you joke around with your friends privately, we say offensive things privately when we're joking with our friends because we all find it funny for one reason or other. But goddamn, dog, you're freaking live streaming. I think it's gross. On a personal level, I think it's gross. It's irresponsible, and it's not cool. I mean, he's 27 years old. At this point, he should know better than and beyond that, he's freaking PewDiePie. He's the biggest YouTuber. He represents all of us. It needs to be more responsible, especially after we all stuck our necks out to defend him. Disappointed is how I would describe my feelings on that one.
Ethan's audience was not happy with his assessment of the situation, with many quick to call out that Ethan himself had used the N-word on stream as recently as April of the same year. This was the first time Ethan had really gotten a major amount of backlash from his audience. Many condemned him as a backstabber immediately, but others waited to see what his follow-up statement would be. The next episode of the H3 podcast gave them their answer.
You know what? If you think I'm wrong, if you think that I'm a racist and a hypocrite, if you didn't bother to watch the podcast and you downvoted and you left a mean comment and you called me a hypocrite, f*** off.
So, unsubscribe. Yeah,
Don't
just
watch.
leave.
Don't watch.
Because we'll have a lot less of that shit to deal
Enjoy
with in the future.
Keemstar, the pinnacle of logic and sanity on YouTube.
Yeah.
Go enjoy his fucking show.
Bye-bye.
Where everything he says is well researched and rational and reasoned. Keemstar.
Again, this episode got a lot of dislikes, and the comments paint a story of a fan base who felt hurt by their favorite YouTuber telling them to unsubscribe. One highly liked comment reads, "Just saw some clips of H3H3's response to all this hate. I wasn't mad at Ethan before, just a little disappointed. but now I'm mad. He brushed us off by saying none of the haters watched the video and just thumbed down. Then he said for the haters to unsubscribe. Not to mention the only person I could find on his Twitter that was defending him was someone who literally stated that they did not watch the video. I don't know how to respond. I'm so confused right now. While the backlash in the comments and dislikes on Ethan's video was noticeable and he undoubtedly lost some fans, after this controversy, the H3 main channel and podcast both continued to grow without any major loss of viewership or subscribers. Ethan made a statement clarifying his position in the next episode of the podcast, this time without alcohol, and it was received much more positively. But this wasn't the end of bad weather for H3H3, just another calm before the storm. In March of 2018, Ethan would inadvertently start a Twitter firestorm. He made a joke saying his member had just touched the inside of a toilet bowl and that he was going to have to cut it off. Then he made a follow-up tweet saying, "My name is Ellen now, call me Ellen." This was a step too far for many online who began to call Ethan transphobic. This tweet in particular got nearly 1,000 likes by the time it was screenshotted. The thread got so much attention that even Justin Roiland, the co-creator of Rick and Morty, commented on the situation. Ethan ended up making a video on his main channel to address the situation called "Apologies if you were offended."
Now, this is the first time I've ever been accused of being like racist or transphobic or anything like that. One of these things where people get on the soapbox and they have to apologize and your sponsors find out and YouTube. It's like one of these things, right? It didn't really escalate that far, but I felt like I was under the microscope of like, hey, this guy's a bigot. Or I don't know what people say. Okay?
Let me turn on the siren for the joke police. Hold on. Just because you were offended by a joke doesn't mean that the joke was inherently offensive.
I feel that people are apologizing for too much shit. I personally feel, and you'll know that if you've been watching our channel, that people are too sensitive and demanding of apologies over shit. So maybe I am being childish about it. I mean, the joke itself was childish to begin with. But to say that I owe you or anybody an apology is just, it's not true. I don't.
This video was very well received, with a few million views and very few dislikes. Ethan's audience at the time flooded the comment section with remarks saying it was refreshing to see someone unapologetically make jokes like this without backing down. Ethan had effortlessly thwarted a situation that threatened to cancel him, and he did it in a way that his audience liked and respected him for, by branding himself as a comedian and claiming that offensive jokes are okay. But Ethan wouldn't keep this stance for much longer. In October of 2018, a YouTuber called Gokanaru released a bombshell video that would pose the biggest threat to Ethan's reputation on YouTube so far. The video was about 95 minutes long and outlined several criticisms of Ethan's content and character that had been talked about online, but never put together in one cohesive piece of content. In the video, Gokanaru talks about the perceived backstabbing of Pewdiepie and some of Ethan's blunders from his podcast. He talks about the episode where Ethan brought the YouTuber JonTron on and wanted to talk about a controversy that John wasn't comfortable talking about. And even though John asked to change the subject, Ethan kept pushing relentlessly. He talks about the episode when Bill Burr came on the podcast and Ethan took his jokes personally and was so stiff in his conversation that he was unable to get off script and have a genuine conversation with someone he looked up to. He talks about the episode where Ethan brought William Osmond on and awkwardly kicked him off after 20 minutes and didn't even put his name in the title until he received backlash. Gokanaru also claimed Ethan doesn't research many of the claims he makes on his podcast and seems to pull his bold statements out of thin air without issuing corrections when he's proven to be factually wrong. This video started to get a lot of traction and views, and Ethan took notice.
What have people been saying about me recently? Okay. That I'm a hypocrite, that I prioritize money over everything else, that I've thrown friends under the bus, that I'm ignorant and poorly informed and spread misinformation, that I'm arrogant, that I cannot handle criticism, and that I've used people, just to name a couple of the reoccurring themes. I'm sure there's so much more you could say about me. And let me just say this, okay, for the record, that I am guilty of all of those things. And so because of this combination of like overconfidence and feeling like I could take everything on, it led me to make a lot of mistakes. And then when I was criticized for those mistakes, then I would act extremely defensive and nasty and not really processing them in a healthy way.
Ethan went on later in the episode to talk about how his depression had recently been influencing his behavior, and what he had been doing to combat it. Many of Ethan's fans accepted this apology and were happy that he was handling things in a mature way. After all, a lot of the criticisms that Gokanaru made can be easily attributed to Ethan being socially awkward sometimes, and doesn't mean these episodes that weren't well received were malicious or a sign that Ethan was changing as a person. But this episode of the podcast still received a lot of dislikes. Ethan received backlash for this episode because while he did address a lot of the criticisms of himself, he never named Gokanaru specifically, talking about the accusations in abstractions, and it seemed like they were going out of their way to keep from acknowledging him directly. Gokanaru would show in a follow-up video that Ethan had in fact searched for his name, taking a screenshot from Ethan's laptop during the podcast.
And in case there's any doubt in anybody's mind that, he's actually seen the video, if you go to the episode of the podcast where he has Gus Johnson on, in that podcast episode, when he clicks the video tab, you can see that my username is in his history. As in, he typed my username in there, and he knows how to type it.
This controversy got put on the back burner for a little over a year, until December 2019, when YouTube made a massive update to their bullying and harassment policy. Part of this policy states that content that threatens individuals is not allowed on YouTube. The same day the new policy was enacted, Gokanaru's video was removed by YouTube. The internet was not happy about YouTube's new policy, and many creators on the site began to worry that they wouldn't be able to criticize each other at all. Gokanaru and others would then come out with a theory that suggested Ethan was a bit more than a passive observer in the deletion of Gokanaru's video, bringing up the fact that the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, had come to visit H3 in the days before the new policy was announced. Most notably, Keemstar started raising this point on Twitter, which caused Ethan and Hila to respond on the H3 podcast, saying they had nothing to do with the new policy or the videos being removed. Gokanaru took some time to work on a video, and in February released his response.
So you really think that Susan, the CEO of YouTube, came here to meet us to talk about you and another guy that made a video about us?
No, I think that Susan, the CEO of YouTube, went there to meet you to talk about creator-on-creator harassment, just as Susan herself says. Right here, in her letter to creators last April. Among a few other topics she discussed with creators, she makes a note that they say the online harassment from fellow creators is growing and needs to be addressed. She said she takes this very seriously, and that while they allow criticism, any threats or doxing crosses the line, and she mentions to stay tuned because they'll be doing more to discourage this.
Really? You think that's how she uses her time?
Yes.
He's obsessed with me, dude.
Yeah.
You want to know how I
Came
met?
here and we talked about some guy that we don't know that made a video about us. That makes
The
total sense.
CEO of YouTube came out to hear me bitch about that.
She was literally there to hear about creators' issues. So yeah, I think it's totally possible.
By this point in Ethan's career, the feud between him and Keemstar had been going on for so long, and both sides had taken so many shots, that it was easy for Ethan's audience to assume that since Keemstar made this argument, it wasn't true. Ethan's audience would probably have been more open to listening if Gokanaru had been the spokesperson for this theory rather than Keemstar, but since Keem's channel and following were much bigger, his claims got all the spotlight and response on the H3 podcast, while Ethan and Hila continued to claim they didn't know who Gokanaru was.
Some guy that we don't know that made a video about us.
Then in May, something changed. Ethan released his massive 3-part series on Keemstar, the Content Nuke Trilogy. This series reminded people of call-out videos from YouTube's past, and it was massively successful. As a way to retaliate, on May 25th, Keemstar uploaded an edited and cleaned up version of Gokanaru's video to his channel, one that Keemstar claimed abided by the new guidelines and wouldn't be taken down by YouTube. Keem claimed this is the video that Ethan doesn't want people to see. Within 4 hours, the video was removed by YouTube. This added more fuel to the fire of people believing Ethan personally had something to do with getting the video taken down. In response, Ethan decided the best way to convince people he wasn't hiding anything would be to respond directly to the video. And in the H3 podcast episode 192, he does just that. Ethan mentions at the beginning of the podcast that so many people had been making so many videos critical of him that it would be crazy to try to respond to each one, and that looking harsh criticism directly in the face is difficult when you receive so much of it. Ethan also went on to reiterate that he had nothing to do with the video being removed.
Why? I mean, ultimately, why would I have it removed after it was all settled and obviously renew this whole conspiracy about like censorship? I mean, it doesn't make much sense to me. But the circumstantial evidence is clearly damning. But I will say that, no, I didn't have anything to do with it. And obviously somebody typed it in on this laptop. I agree with that. I don't know who it was. I mean, a lot of people use this laptop. So it may have been me. I don't know.
During this episode, Ethan brings on a ton of people to defend himself and his character, including Pewdiepie, JonTron, and even shows a clip of Keemstar himself talking about an old drama where he sides with Ethan. And with that, the effectiveness of Gokanaru's video to expose or discredit Ethan to his audience was pretty much gone. The video was hard blocked on YouTube, and Ethan had finally acknowledged its existence by name. The Ethan versus Keemstar feud had become so reductive as to resemble a sports rivalry, with fans taking their respective sides regardless of what anyone was saying. But Gokanaru and Keemstar were far from the last people to go after Ethan, as even bigger threats to Ethan's credibility and career were just over the horizon. In April of 2020, popular YouTuber Some Ordinary Gamers, aka Mutahar, uploaded a video called The Hypocrisy of Ethan Klein. In this video, Mutahar makes a series of allegations against Ethan, but goes on to say that his biggest problem he has with Ethan is his ego that's put on display during the podcast. As an example of this, Mutahar shows that Jeff Bezos recently gave $100 million to a nonprofit food bank. It was the early months of the pandemic, and there was a lot of uncertainty about the future around the world. According to Mutahar, on one of Ethan's podcasts, he had donation shamed Jeff Bezos for donating so little of his net worth.
Ethan did the exact same thing. He looked at Jeff Bezos, said, wow, the richest guy in the world only gave $100 million, and just completely shit on it. Now, I'm just going to say this much, okay? Donation shaming is shit, Ethan, okay? Let me just put it out there. To look at someone donate and then immediately look at how much they're worth is so f***ing toxic, it's not even funny. But he made that take. And then it's also hypocritical because it's the same guy that lives in a $10 million fucking mansion, look it up, and hasn't donated shit, as far as I'm considered, to COVID-19.
Mutahar also brought up the fact that Ethan had only donated $1,000 to Team Trees when he himself was a multi-millionaire. Ethan would go on to respond in his own video called Everybody Loves Ethan just a few days later. The video starts out with a self-aware intro of Ethan and Hila sarcastically talking about how they hadn't changed at all since the beginning of their careers on YouTube as they walk around their mansion.
You may have noticed our beautiful LA mansion. And no, it's not a set. It's really where we live. Oh, sour.
Hey, don't tell people where we live.
Well, it's their business too, Hila. Everybody's got a right to know where we live.
Hey, but didn't we move because we kept getting swatted?
Well, yes, Hila, but don't worry about that. We've got 2 vicious guard dogs to protect us.
Ethan goes on to say that he never actually donation shamed Bezos, going through some clips of him criticizing Bezos and some companies, but never actually donation shaming him. In fact, Mutahar had already released a follow-up video where he says Ethan never actually donation shamed Bezos. Ethan then shows some dates, proving that he had called out billionaires on Twitter about 2 weeks before Bezos made his donation. Maybe this tweet is where Mutahar originally got the idea that Ethan had donation shamed Bezos, or maybe it was this thumbnail. Ethan claimed that Mutahar leaving his video up was the definition of slander. Then Ethan went on to make the biggest claim of his video.
It's the same guy that lives in a $10 million fucking mansion, look it up.
So now he gets his fans all riled up about what an evil dude I am, and then encourages them to go find out where I live.
It can be argued that Mutahar was simply telling people to look up the value of their mansion and not actually telling people to seek out their home address. But it's also easy to see where Ethan is coming from on this point. If someone Googles the value of their house, they might find the address too. Ethan's video was seen as a slam dunk in the YouTube community, and he really looked to be back in his old form. Mutahar ended up taking down both of his videos on the situation and issuing an apology. Ethan had not only survived another attempt to expose him, but it had made him stronger. But this rebound wouldn't last forever. In April of 2022, Ethan and the crew produced a podcast that would end up going down in infamy. The episode started out with Ethan poking fun at James Charles. In a recent video, James Charles had shown his Amazon, which had a recommendation to buy diapers again.
So, he's a power bottom?
No,
that's an option, power bottom.
So wouldn't that mean that the diapers aren't for him, though?
No, if he's on the bottom, he's getting railed.
As Ethan and his producer Dan continued to make jokes about power bottoms, some of the audience in the chat started to push back.
I love you guys so much, but y'all really need some LGBTQT.
Why? What did I say wrong?
Shut up.
What did I say wrong?
Shut up.
Colin, if you have a problem with my character...
You got it right. I mean, you literally got it right.
What a power bottom was.
Yeah. Shut up.
Later in the episode, Ethan took a call from a listener named Matt.
So do you find it offensive if I say, by being like, oh, he's probably a bottom? Is that the problem? To make
Absolutely.
So would you consider yourself a top or a bottom, or you don't do that the labels?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew you were going to go there. And I mean this with all peace and love and with respect, Ethan. It's none of your business.
Oh, sure. I mean, you can. That's a totally valid response. You don't have to answer the question, but you have a preference one way or the other.
Yeah, but that's another dangerous assumption too. Because a lot of gay men don't have a preference.
Can I guess?
So that's another dangerous stereotype. What's that?
Can I guess what is your preference?
You can.
Will you tell me if it's right? If I guess right?
No.
Well, but
okay. You know what? I'm not gonna get into it, Matt. But we all know which one you prefer.
By the end of the live stream, Ethan's chat and subreddit were in full revolt about his remarks.
People say it was gross and disappointing. Saying you can guess if Matt is a power bottom by his voice is so gross. But I was right. That was the point. Wasn't I? He admitted.
Yeah, of course you were right. And honestly, just so over these fucking people. Shut the up! Shut up!
I mean, I was just trying to make the call fun.
Yes, it's a entertaining show. Shut the up.
Someone says, I don't know what's up.
So disappointing.
Someone said,
grow up. Jesus fucking Christ.
Dan. I don't know what's up with Ethan today, but something's off. Bad vibes this episode.
Shut the up. Unsubscribe. Go away.
Ethan said he wanted to address all of this during the episode so he wouldn't have to talk about it again, but that couldn't have been further from what ended up happening. Later in the day, Ethan apologized on Twitter. The replies to this tweet include comments like, "For me, longtime fan and resident queer, it's hearing you talk over every single caller. You yell over them, reply with who cares, and don't really listen to what they have to say. What's the point of taking calls if it's not to have a conversation? Saying this with peace and love." A lot of people also took issue with Dan's dismissiveness and hostility. On the next episode of the podcast, Ethan revealed the extent of the damage.
Today we have no sponsors because I am an existential threat to gay rights and all progress. So, of course, our wonderful fans have taken upon themselves to write all of our sponsors and to have them not sponsor or not to support us. So
even though Ethan took a lot of flack for this and lost all the show's sponsors, many fans were willing to forgive him and move on. But it wouldn't be long before Ethan would make a series of explosive comments that would get him in very hot water again. In May of 2022, a tragedy happened at an elementary school in Texas. Just a few days later, an NRA meeting was scheduled to take place in Houston. Ethan had a podcast on the topic of gun control and made some comments that would spark a fierce debate.
So there was a big protest outside the NRA meeting, which was good. Do we have any insight into what they're actually talking about there at the NRA meeting that's today in Texas? Someone should bomb that building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll roll that back.
Roll that back immediately.
Everything but violence.
Rewind time.
Let me...
We cut back.
I got a little carried away there. Nobody bombed the building, all right? I take that back. Thank you.
He later went on in the episode to say this.
Is it bad advice to say, like, go outside Ted Cruz's house and just shoot in the air?
Yes.
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 Oh. Well, because I'm just saying, it's like the cigarette thing. I'm just saying, it's time for drastic action. Do they feel safe? If there was a shooting at Walmart, and then wait, stop.
There was a shooting at Walmart. This is very insensitive. Stop making this joke.
And
There's
then
literally a shooting at Walmart today.
Don't finish it when it's cutting out.
Let me finish. And then they showed me that video and said this is what they were doing the day before. I'd be like, that's horrible, but I get it.
The internet lit up after this episode, and Ethan started trending on Twitter almost immediately. YouTube's response wasn't far behind. Ethan tweeted, "Conservatives got triggered over jokes I told and mass reported me. I got banned for a week and the episode was removed. If only they cared about dead kids as much as they do jokes. So I want to say sorry. Sorry y'all are such pathetic snowflakes. The NRA and Abbott." Abbott being the governor of Texas, who Ethan blames for the tragedy. Ethan received pretty predictable reactions from this, with his supporters backing him and insisting these were merely harmless jokes, and others who saw his statements as crossing a line. One YouTuber called Legally Armed America even reported Ethan to the state police in Texas. Ethan ended up sticking to his claim that these were just jokes, and came back to YouTube after his 1-week ban had passed. After looking at all this evidence, I think there are 3 major differences between Ethan and other creators whose careers have survived cancellation. First, instead of relying on a loyal fanbase to keep him afloat, Ethan and his crew tell fans who disagree with him to unsubscribe, and he finds a new fanbase instead. This leaves a smaller core group of supporters around, and those who were on the fence end up leaving. He relies on this core fanbase buying memberships to the channel and buying Teddy Fresh to fund the H3H3 media empire even when sponsors bow out. Second, Ethan now has a fan base that holds him up to their ethical standards. He can be cancelled at any time, and in some ways he already has. He is constantly apologizing for things he has said in the recent and distant past. His only Achilles heel now is his own fan base and the words that come out of his mouth. The third difference between Ethan and truly uncancelable creators is that others usually own up and apologize for what they've done, or they just don't talk about it at all. Ethan goes a different direction in some instances and has tried to edit the past. In H3 Podcast episode 29, the episode where Ethan goes on a drunken rant and tells fans to unsubscribe, if you watch the episode on YouTube, that entire segment has been edited out after posting using YouTube's editing tools. It was originally there, and Ethan even linked to it in his pinned comment. The video skips forward in time, and it's like there's something missing. The length of this episode on YouTube is 3 hours and 33 minutes, but the unedited version is still up on Spotify at 4 hours and 5 minutes. Maybe Ethan removed the segment from YouTube because he's not proud of telling his fans to unsubscribe, or maybe it's because he uses the N-word about 25 times during this segment. He's done the exact same thing with the infamous iDubbbz episode where Ethan said the N-word multiple times. It's all edited out now. YouTube version 53 minutes and 13 seconds. Spotify version 57 minutes. I had to look through old commentary videos to find clips from these podcasts that Ethan had edited out, as it's the only way to find video of some of these moments. In my opinion, Ethan is totally within his rights to do this with his own content, but it definitely made me wonder when I was looking at some of these poorly received videos with a lot of nice comments, are they scrubbing comments? Are there other parts of podcasts trimmed out? What are we missing? It's almost impossible to tell unless you already know what you're looking for. It is worth noting that both channels are bleeding subscribers, suggesting that maybe the ship is sinking after all. Another thing I noticed when looking into this is massive loss of views on the main channel. This can only mean one of 2 things. Either Ethan or YouTube are removing old videos. Is Ethan removing content that he isn't proud of anymore, or is YouTube taking some kind of action against him? I think Ethan's eager willingness to call out YouTube when he's slighted by them suggests that this view loss is something Ethan himself is doing. Only time will tell if Ethan is now going through another phase of his evolution or alienating yet another group of people who enjoy his content. But for now, his podcast continues to pull impressive views and revenue to sustain a full cast and crew. Ethan's resilience and ability to stay ahead of trends has retained a core audience in spite of, or maybe because of, the regular controversies he is now in. And that, for now, is what makes H3H3 uncancelable. If the next video in this series is ready, you'll see a link to it right here. If not, check out my uncancelable video that I made on Pewdiepie. It details a lot of the controversies we talked about in a different light, and I think you're going to enjoy it a lot. As always, thanks for watching, stay weird internet, see you next time, peace.